Right, I'm just going to get started, and hopefully by the time I get through the intro, we'll have a few more people. Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for coming. My name is Stacy, and I'm a bookseller and the events coordinator at Belmont Books. Belmont Books, for those of you who are not familiar with us, is an independent and locally owned bookstore in Belmont, Massachusetts. Before we begin, I'd like to let you know that we have a number of virtual events coming up, including Susan Cohen in conversation with Elena Noradine on Tuesday, Colleen Hoover on Wednesday, and our monthly story time next Thursday. You can register for these and our other events on our website, belmontbooks.com, which is also where you can purchase all of tonight's book recommendations, which I will be sending the links to in the chat. If you have any questions for the authors, please type them into the Q&A section and we will get to as many questions as we can at the end of the presentation. We're very excited to welcome back Rajani and Josh, both of whom are longtime friends of Belmont Books. I want to tell you a little bit about them and then I will turn the event over to them. Josh Funk is a software engineer and the author of books like the Lady Pancake and Sir French Toast series, It's Not a Fairy Tale series, How to Code with Pearl and Pascal series, A Story of Patience and Fortitude series, Dear Dragon, Pyrosaurs, My Pet Feet, and more. Since the fall of 2015, Josh has visited or virtually visited over 500 schools, classrooms, and libraries, and he is a board member of the Writers Loft. Josh is the host of Funkin' Friends, a show where he interviews members of the children's literature community. Josh grew up in New England and studied computer science in school. Today, he still lives in New England, and when not writing Java code or Python scripts, he drinks Java coffee and writes manuscripts, and that is his line, not mine. Rajani LaRocca writes middle grade novels and picture books. Some of her books reflect her experience as an immigrant, book nerd, and foodie, and some explain medical topics to kids. And some are just ideas that pop into her head and won't go away. Also not my line. Her debut middle grade novel, Midsummer's Mayhem, was a Kirkus Best Book of 2019, an Indies Introduced selection, and an Indie Next pick. She is a member of SCBWI, Grub Street, the Writers Loft, the 12 by 12 picture book community, the Novel 19s, the Soaring 20s, and STEAM Team 2020, a group of authors who write about STEAM topics. She was born in India, immigrated to the US when she was a baby, and grew up in Louisville, Kentucky. A graduate of Harvard College and Harvard Medical School, she practices medicine and lives outside Boston with her family. And without further ado, I am going to turn the event over to you folks and looking forward to these great recommendations.
Oh, well, thanks, Stacy.
Thank you.
I feel like I got to picture-bookify my bio there. It's a little long and I started falling asleep during it. Did it mention in yours about your podcast? Did I?
No, I think
Yeah,
this
I think
must
you
be
need
an
to
old
add
bio
that.
for me too. Yeah, and
Yeah.
Red, White, and Whole, one of my novels just won the New England Book Award, so I think I need to put that in there too.
Yeah. No, but what about your podcast about stuff? Tell people about that.
Yes, the STEM Women in Kidlet podcast. So we interview women who have STEM backgrounds who also now write or illustrate for children's books. So it's very exciting. And there are a lot of them. So we've had some fantastic interviews. We've had it up and running for a little over a year now. So we've had a great time.
Is it 30-something episodes you're at?
Something like that.
Yeah. Cool. So definitely subscribe to that one too. We're here to talk about, I guess, books that we like that are available now. And I don't know, before we jumped on, we were both talking about some young adult books that we're into. I'm into young adult mysteries, but I guess, do you have like a favorite book from this past year, or any that you want to start with as far as middle grade or picture book or anything?
Oh gosh, like so many, but so okay, I'll just talk about like one that came out early this year, Amari and the Night Brothers, that I just absolutely adore. And I know it's hugely popular, but like if people know kids who haven't read this yet, they should read it. So it is like a beginning of a kind of magical series about a young Black girl whose brother has disappeared, and she gets kind of involved with this society, this kind of like Bureau of Supernatural Affairs. So it's like Men in Black with magic. And they're like all kinds of interesting creatures. And she even gets like the opportunity to go there for the summer because she has magic too. But she is like the outsider, which is, so it's like a classic, kind of outsider story. And it's just so well written, so much fun. It's got great and quirky and hilarious magic. And so any kids that haven't read it yet really should read it. It's one of my favorites from this year.
So Amari and the Night Brothers, and it's written by.
That's right, by B.B. Alston.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I think that Stacy is. Yeah, there we go. Putting
she's
links
on
into
it.
the channel. All right. Do you have? I don't know if I've paired my future pre-order recommendations with existing books, but do you have any of these pre-orders like fantasy or anything like that you've?
Yeah. So the first one that I mentioned is A Comb of Wishes by Lisa Stringfellow, who is a local author, actually local to the Boston area, and a teacher. And it is a fantasy, and it involves Caribbean magic and a girl whose mother has passed away, and she finds this comb in the ocean, and she makes a wish on it, and then there is a mermaid who is really mad, but she's like tied to this comb and she has to grant a wish. But I don't know, like, so this girl wants her mother back, but of course a wish that big, I don't think that it's going to go well. And it just looks so fantastic, and I can't wait to read it.
Now, is this
early?
Is that Lisa's debut?
Her debut?
Yeah. And
yes.
she's been writing for a while. I mean, I remember meeting her at conferences 5, 6, 7 years ago. So she's really earned it.
Yes, and I
really
think when I met her at a conference, she read aloud part of the first chapter of what was going to become this book, and it was so compelling. So I can't wait.
Was that at a New England open mic?
No, I think this was at an agent editor day kind of thing.
Okay.
Yeah, it was cool.
Now you read one of your books at a New England open mic years ago that I think turned into the DNA and
yes,
yeah, tell us about that book. Tell us about that book.
Yeah, The Secret Code Inside You, All About Your DNA, came out this September, and it is a kid's first introduction to DNA and genes, but also touches on the limits of our genes and how our choices also make us who we are. And it was the first picture book I ever wrote, and it's in rhyme. And Josh, yeah. You write in rhyme. You know that it's not like always easy, and actually usually it's not easy at all. But and especially because it's nonfiction.
Yeah. I remember you reading this at an open mic at the New England conference, probably 2015-ish, give or take. 16, yeah. I don't know. It was in the big glass room. I think.
I think you're right.
Which then became the bookstore. But yeah. So since we're on picture books, yes. One picture book that was one of my favorites this year is, let's see, Lakshmi's Mooch, which is written by Shelley Anand and illustrated by Nabi H. Ali. And it's this super cool picture book about body positivity, really. But it's super cute. This little girl, she has like tiny little hairs on her upper lip. And it's just something that is in her family, and kids at first make her uncomfortable about it. I don't think it's really so much about teasing, but it's, just discomfort. But eventually everyone, spoiler alert, in her class wants to grow a mooch because, and it's really adorable, great body positivity book. I highly recommend it. And yeah, just super adorable. So, and this book is out. Another book that is coming out soon that I think, I don't know, I didn't really pair these together. I was just thinking about books that that I am excited about coming out soon. But one that I am very excited about is by Mike Corrado. It's called Where is Bina Bear? And I have not read any of these picture books. A lot of them are that I'm going to recommend are by people that I trust, or they're about topics that I'm interested in learning more about. That's usually kind of how I selected some of these, because unlike, I guess you might get arcs of and F and Gs of middle grades, sorry, not F and Gs, but arcs of middle grades sometimes. I don't get a lot of F and Gs of picture books. F and G is stands for folded and gathered, and it's I actually have one right here. It's they don't actually staple the pages together. This is the inside. You can actually see where the parts come apart. So it's just an easy way for the publishers to get them to the bookstores and let the bookstores see them, and librarians and stuff. So most of the books that I'm going to recommend are by authors that I'm interested in, or illustrators that I've always loved. But this book, Where is Bina Bear by Mike Corrado. Mike is the author illustrator of the Little Elliot elephant series, but this book, it looks adorable, and it's about this cute bear who I think is not very good at hiding. And so completely unrelated to body positivity, but yeah, it's
Mike about Corrado a body book that you can't hide.
Yeah, maybe that's what it is. I don't know. but yeah, let's see. Yeah, it's described as a funny, poignant picture book about a bear who can't be found. And the bear is essentially trying to hide, but it's obvious where the bear is hiding. So anyway, cracks me up. But yeah, so I don't know. Moving on. Do you? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Anything else? Like, do you? What about another picture book that you enjoyed this year?
Oh, okay. So
I
another
loved
favorite of mine, and this is part of a series. It's called I'm Sorry. It's written by Michael Ian Black and illustrated by Debbie Ridpath Owie. And Michael Ian Black is a comedian. He's an actor. He's been on shows and stuff. And Debbie is a great author illustrator. But it's about a little girl, a flamingo, and a potato. And this whole series, there's a bunch of them. There's see, I have I'm sad over there. There's an I'm bored. But they're all about emotions. And in this book, the potato does something that upsets the flamingo and really won't apologize, doesn't want to apologize. It was pretty cool. And it's just really funny. And it also gets to the heart of emotions, and how to apologize, what's a fake apology, and not in exactly those terms. But so that is another picture book that I really loved this year. And so I mean, that whole series is great, but this one is I'm Sorry. And it's always, all three are just about an anthropomorphic potato, flamingo, and a little girl. And then so yeah, another book that I don't have with me. A lot of these were books I took out of the library. But I Love You, Baby Burrito by Angela Dominguez. Honestly, it's really just like, it's a cute, adorable, loving parent book. But it's also, I mean, it's just a baby in a, being treated like a burrito. And it kind of had me at the title. So yeah, by Angela Dominguez. So I highly recommend that as well. I don't know, you want to switch back over to, and that book is out already. I Love You, Baby Burrito. Switch over to some middle grades that you enjoyed this year.
Yes. Why don't I do? Okay, let's do a small theme of books in verse, because I read a bunch of them this year. And so my novel that came out in February, Red, White, and Whole, is written in verse. And then I just got.
Well, tell me about that.
So that novel is set in 1983, and
the award-winning novel.
It is about a 13-year-old girl. Yes, I guess it's award-winning now. Yes, the
congratulations.
New England Book Award-winning novel. Thank you. Yeah, it's been exciting. It's about the 13-year-old girl who feels torn between the worlds of her immigrant parents and her friends at school, and she kind of wants to be a normal teenager, and it's set in 1983, so she wants to wear like cool 80s clothes and listen to awesome pop music and go to a middle school dance. But her parents, and especially her mom, think that she has better things to do with her time. And then her mom is diagnosed with a kind of blood cancer called leukemia. And the girl feels that if she could just be the perfect daughter, the daughter that her parents want her to be, she can somehow save her mother's life. So it's a fictional story, but it's based, a lot of the emotion, a lot of the events in the story have a lot to do with stuff that happened in my own life. So it's really close to my heart. But yeah, and that story came to me as a metaphor. And but I'd never written anything in verse when it came time to write this story, even though I thought it should be written in poetry. So I had read kind of all these middle grade and YA novels in verse. And now I'm a huge fan of books in verse. And so some of my favorites from this year include Unsettled by Reem Faruqi, which is about a girl who immigrates with her family from Pakistan to a small town in Georgia. And kind of, so there's an immigrant story about like kind of finding a way to fit into a new place and finding a way to kind of put down roots. And she loves to swim. So there's a lot of swimming imagery in that. And then she has an older brother who has to kind of contend with some hateful stuff, and how she kind of helps navigate those waters. But it is just really beautifully written, and just a wonderful example of how the story and poetry can kind of bring emotions across. Another one that I loved is The Magical Imperfect by Chris Farren, which came out in June. And this is another, I mean, it's sad to say, but it's historical fiction, right? It's set in 1989 in the San Francisco area during the World Series. So as we know, something very interesting happened. I mean, something kind of scary happened, terrifying happened at that time. But it's about two kind of outcast kids, one whose mother kind of has gone to a mental hospital, and he's kind of selectively mute. He can't really express himself anymore. And another girl who has a terrible skin condition, a terrible form of eczema that like it's kind of scarring, and people call her the monster. And they kind of find each other and form a friendship. And so the boy is from a Jewish family and the girl is Filipina. And the boy kind of hears stories from his grandfather about this kind of magical clay that might be able to heal his friend. And so there's like a little bit of a magical element to it, but then it's set against the baseball and the World Series in 1989, during which there was an earthquake. So it is, it's just really beautifully written too. And I absolutely love this kind of friendship and family story. And then, okay, I might as well just say it now. The other novel in verse that's on the list that I recommended is Worst Case Colin by Rebecca Caprara, who is another local author. And this book is so good. It is about a boy whose mom has passed away and who lives with his dad, who is a really super smart math professor, but he has a hoarding problem. And so this boy is like trying to like just, you know, kind of live his life and, you know, go to school and, you know, and he's got some really good friends, but his dad's problem is getting much, much worse, like to the point where like, you know, there's not enough room in the house. Like they can't get into the kitchen. There's no fresh food. Like it's scary. But this boy is also like, he realizes that he doesn't want anybody else to know, because if they take him away from his dad, then he's lost both of his parents. It's so good. It's so, so good. And another perfect example of how verse can kind of tackle scary, difficult topics, but in a really beautiful and accessible way.
Cool. Well, yeah. So since you're talking about books in verse, one of the picture books that I recommended is a rhyming picture book, and it is called well, it's actually the sequel to another picture book. It's Prince and Knight. And Prince and Knight came out a few years ago, and I think there was also a Princess and Maiden that was after that. But this is the sequel to Prince and Knight, called Tale of the Shadow King. And it's a LGBTQ+ story about a prince and a knight and how they end up it's just another, it's an adventure story in medieval times. And it's published by Littleby, who I think you've worked with in the past, but
yes.
also it's illustrated by Stevie Lewis, who has illustrated a couple books that I wrote about the New York Public Library Lions. So Prince and Knight is, it's an adorable, adorable book. And now I'm not totally sure about whether this book is in rhyme, but I think it probably is.
I think it
or
is.
at least it's in some sort of, I'm gonna look it up right now, but it's coming out next year. It's called 'Twas the Night Before Pride. And I think it's written in the style of 'Twas the Night Before Christmas. It's by Joanna McClintock and illustrated by Juana Medina. Juana Medina is the author illustrator of several award-winning books. I'm blanking on the early reader series that she has with Candlewick. But anyway, so it's yeah, it was the night before Pride, and joyful homage to inclusion and community. And so I highly recommend that, sticking with both a poetic and LGBTQ theme as far as what is coming out next year. There's a bunch of books that are coming out next year that that I'm excited about. Again, a lot of times I haven't read them, but there is a book by so my favorite picture book from last year was, usually have it in easy read. Well, I don't know, it might be somewhere else in the house, but it's called Your Name is a Song, and is written by Jamila Tompkins Bigelow and illustrated by Luisa Uribe. That was from last year, but Jamila Tompkins Bigelow has a new book coming out next year called Abdul's Story. And Abdul's Story is about a little boy who loves storytelling but struggles with learning that it's okay to make a mistake while he's writing a story. And it's illustrated by Tiffany Rose. And anything that Jamila Tompkins Bigelow writes, I think is awesome. She also wrote Mommy's Kimar, and my niece loved that book. Just had to read it over and over again. So yeah, Abdul's Story is one that I am very excited about. And then, and my favorite book from several years before this was called Boats for Papa, which is written and illustrated by Jessica Bagley. And she has a new book that she illustrated coming out next year called Courage Hats, which is written by Kate Hoffler, who's also written a bunch of good books. But this is about a little boy and a little girl who dress as a little boy and a bear who become friends. And anything that Jessica Bagley illustrates is gold to me. So Courage Hats looks pretty awesome, and I basically buy everything that she illustrates whenever it comes out or writes. So those are some. Now, do you have any nonfiction that you've got? I know some of the stuff you've been talking about is sort of historical fiction. Are any of the books on your list nonfiction? Rajani.
Yes. Okay, but first I have to tell you, I saw a preview of the art from 'Twas the Night Before Pride.
Yeah.
Stunning. Stunning. And the amount of research that went into all the art, mind blowing. Like it's, oh my gosh, I can't wait for that book to come out. It's going to be amazing.
Oh, it's Juana and Lucas, right? That's what the book is.
Yes, Juana and Lucas was her chapter book series.
Yeah, Juana Medina's. Yeah. So.
Yes. Okay, so yes, nonfiction. So Fallout by Steve Sheinkin tackles the Cold War in a really interesting, like, just can't page turning kind of way. Like Steve Sheinkin, he wrote Bomb, which won all kinds of awards and stuff like that. It's I mean, he's an incredible nonfiction
most of his
author.
books win awards.
Yeah, he's just a generally amazing guy, like just a really nice guy too. So that's his book this year that is just a must not, cannot miss. And like I really do love nonfiction, but I have to tell you, I find kids nonfiction so much easier than I'm an adult. I read nonfiction for adults too, but sometimes it's just a lot. You know what I mean? It's just like a lot. But I love it when any author can make nonfiction read as like, and read like fiction and be as exciting as fiction. And sometimes, the truth is as exciting as any story you could make up. So yay. So that's a fantastic one that is out now already. But then you, Josh, pointed out, you added to our list this Alias Anna, a true story of outwitting the Nazis, which is apparently about a girl who is a pianist. And not only is it nonfiction, it is also written in verse. So like we're bringing multiple worlds together of like awesomeness. And that looks absolutely amazing. And I'm really looking forward to reading that. And that is,
Susan Hood, who wrote that, she I think used to be an editor at publishers, and she's written so many books. So, but she wrote the one about Ada's violin, I think, that from several years ago, about the orchestra that was made from garbage, which I'm pretty sure was like subject on 60 Minutes at one point. And she's written a whole bunch of books. She wrote Lifeboat 12. Which is recent. She's from Connecticut. She's relatively local too. I think, because she used to work in New York at all the big publishers. But yeah, Outwitting the Nazis. Staying in that line, there is a book out now by Lori Walmark called Codebreaker Spy Hunter: How Elizabeth Friedman Changed the Course of Two World Wars. And it is about, I think the first crypto analyst, this woman, Elizabeth Friedman, who she started the CIA's cryptology unit, and she basically was a code breaker who helped break codes in both world wars. And it's written by Lori Walmark, who she prides herself on writing about dead women in STEM. So that's her thing. Has she been on your podcast yet? If not,
yes, she has. She's lovely.
I was gonna say she's probably one of the first few episodes. But yeah, so she's great, and so she's got lots of books about dead women in STEM, and one fiction picture book so far. But yeah, I highly recommend the Codebreaker Spy Hunter, which is pretty cool. And that book is already out. And I don't think I really have much more nonfiction on my list. I guess I'm more of a fiction guy, but there is a book it's called, it's illustrated by a friend of mine. Her name is Supriya Kelkar. Do you know Supriya at all?
Yeah, she's lovely.
Social media and stuff. We share an agent, and it's called American Desi by Jyoti Rajan Gopal. And it's interesting because she's written middle grade novels. She's written picture books. Supriya has. This is the first book that she's illustrating, and she does it with cut paper. And so I've kind of been watching her art evolve because we share an agent. I've been friends with her on social media, and I even called into her son's birthday party once because they're fans of the Lady Pancake and Sir French Toast books. And so, like, I FaceTime for 30 seconds to wish him a happy birthday. But yeah, so this is a book about a little girl who doesn't know, she's struggling with her identity, doesn't know, is she American, is she Indian, can she be both? And so, straddling two cultural worlds, embracing identity and things like that. But I'm excited about the book, of course, but also because the illustrator, it's her first time that she's illustrated. And that's pretty awesome. I mean, people always ask me, now this is sort of unrelated, but people always ask me if I'm going to write chapter books, and I write picture books. I've written picture. Now you do both. You write novels, you write in verse, not in fiction, nonfiction. I write fiction picture books. The way I see it, and I tell people, is like, if you were to go up to an artist and say, a great painter, and say, hey, you're a great painter, can you go sculpt something? Now, some painters might be great at sculpting and drawing comics and doing lots of it, and some are really just good at painting. It's not that they couldn't try to sculpt, but it's like it's a whole new art form. And that's kind of how I think of it. So, you know, you're just kind of an all-around artist. You can do all the things. I'm the picture book guy. So I think about, but when I see people who were writers and then all of a sudden start to illustrate on top of that, that you didn't even know you could do that. Like that's not different kinds of writing. That's not writing picture book and writing middle grade. That's like saying, you know, you're a great painter now, like build a house. Like that's something completely different. So
yeah,
anyway.
or like play the piano. Go play the piano. You know how to paint, right? You can do that.
Yeah.
It's like, wait, what?
They're both artistic, you know, things. So but yeah, so American Desi I'm very excited about. And another author who I pretty much love everything she's done is Tracy Sorel, and she has, I think, won awards for a bunch of her books in the past, but she's a new one coming out next year called Powwow Day. It's illustrated by Madeline Goodnight, and she wrote, well, We Are Grateful won like almost every award, and so this is another book. She is it's about a Native American story, and it's about a river that wants to dance at Powwow Day. And I think it's awesome that we're getting more stories that are written by people from backgrounds that we haven't heard before, because there are lots of stories for people to tell, and we don't really need the same story over and over again. So I'm excited to hear this one.
Yeah. Her book this year is We Are Still Here, and it's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, that's sort of a sequel to We Are Grateful.
Yeah, and it's nonfiction, and it's just so well done. Like I love it. I love it. Yeah, and I can't wait to read this one too. And I will just say, just to put in a word for American Desi, like as a kid, I totally felt that way. And I would have loved to have had a book that reflected my experience in this way. So it's exciting. So it's
awesome.
I can't wait to see it. And Jyoti Gopal and Supriya are both like just lovely human beings. So I'm so excited to see that collaboration like come together. And I think that might be Jyoti's debut picture book too.
Is it?
So
okay.
I think it's debut, which is extra exciting. So
yeah, cool.
Yeah. Yay. Okay. So how about a little sci-fi?
Yeah, do it.
Okay. So one of my other favorite books of the year is 8th Grade versus the Machines by Josh Levy. And I got to tell you, so Josh is a friend of mine, and our debut novels came out the same year. And so that was 7th Grade versus the Galaxy. And it is basically about a bunch of kids on a public school spaceship orbiting one of Jupiter's moons. And basically there's a secret warp drive on it, and aliens come and they zap the spaceship to like another part of the galaxy, and they're still like running away from these aliens, and it is so hilarious. And Josh is a lawyer, and there's like a hilarious time travel mall experience in that book that like is one of the funniest things I've ever read in my life. And there's a whole disclaimer, like there's a legal disclaimer, like if you're going to be into the time machine, like all the rules and like what they're not responsible for if you do. It's so funny, and it ends on a little bit of a cliffhanger. And this is the sequel, 8th Grade versus Machines. And basically like their entire school, everybody except for these 3 kids is like the aliens have taken them and are holding them prisoner. And these 3 kids are trying to rescue like their whole school, all their teachers, all their friends. And and then there's some like evil robots, and there's a really awesome hamster, and it's just a completely madcap, really fun adventure, and I love it. And the best part is that even though it is hilarious and action packed, there's a lot of heart, and like these kids are really good to each other, and they're good friends, and they all kind of bring something different to the table. And yeah, so I just absolutely love it. Zany space.
That's cool. I think it's not sci-fi, but it's got some magic-ish in it. There's a couple chapter books that I put on the list. One of them is there's actually 2 books coming out on the same day in the Teeny Houdini series by Katrina Moore. And so she's written a bunch of great picture books. Grandpa Grumps was one of my favorites, and there's a sequel to that coming too, but I don't think it's available for pre-order yet. Otherwise I would have put it on the list. But Teeny Houdini The Disappearing Act, I think is what it's called. And it comes out January 4th, so very, very soon. And the second book in the series at the same time, Tina Houdini. But it's a chapter book about a little girl who loves magic tricks and wants to impress her friends with magic. And I haven't read it, but it's coming out very soon, and I'm excited for Katrina. And it's different than a lot of the chapter book mysteries because it is focusing on magic, which I think they do teach you how to do some of the magic tricks in the book. You will learn how to do them without breaking any magician rules and spoilers and stuff.
Nice.
So, yeah.
I think she disappears the class hamster, right?
Is that what it is? Okay. Yeah. I don't know.
So there's the hamster.
Okay.
There's the hamster link there.
Okay, and then there's another chapter book by Hannah Khan, who has written some great middle grade stories like Amina's Voice, and she's also written a bunch of great picture books. But she has a chapter book called Zara's Rules for Record-Breaking Fun, and that comes out. I don't know. I'm sure it comes out this spring or something. But so it's about a girl who really wants to break the world record for something, and a new family moves across the street, and there's competition between her and the girl across the street. But anyway, so another cool book for the chapter book crowd, and yeah, so highly recommend both of those. Hannah Khan has a lot of awesome books, but yeah, so
yes, she's just an incredible author. Yeah. Oh, yay.
So, and I realized I do actually have one more nonfiction book that I forgot to mention.
Oh, go for it.
It's called A Perfect Fit: How Lena Lane Bryant Changed the Shape of Fashion. And so it's written by the combo of people. Mara Rockcliffe she writes nonfiction picture books, and she gets the most amazing illustrators for some of her books. If you just Google Mara Rockcliffe and look at all the books that she has, they're all so beautiful. But this one's illustrated by Juana Martinez Neal, who won Caldecott Honor for Alma and Her Voice, or Alma's Name, and she also illustrated Baby Moon, which our friend Haley Barrett wrote.
Yes.
But so anyway, this is A Perfect Fit. It's obviously has a body positivity angle, and it's the story of Lane Bryant, and who is
so awesome.
Familiar with those stories, and so yeah, but so that one seems pretty cool. I know nothing about her except that it's a store, so I'm excited to learn more. And beautiful illustrations always. So yeah, and let's see, there's not that many more on our lists here. Do you have books coming out next year as well? I think we talked about some of yours that are out, but not the ones that are coming out.
Right. I have one book coming out next year.
Oh, right. 2023 is your next big year. But okay, so your book coming out next.
I had 6 this year. That was a lot, and believe me, I'm grateful. But I have one next year, which is much more doable and imaginable. So it is actually the first picture book we ever sold. It's called I'll Go and Come Back. It's coming out with Candlewick on March 29th. And it is the story of a little girl named Jyoti who goes to visit her family in India. And she's like lonely and homesick because it's really different from what her life is like in the US. But then her grandmother kind of, plays with her and hangs out with her. They cook and they eat together, and she feels like more at home. And then, kind of when it's time to leave, she doesn't want to. And then she remembers this phrase in Tamil. We don't say goodbye. We say, I'll go and come back. So there's always this promise of return. So then she comes back home, and then the grandmother visits her in the US, and she feels lonely and homesick. And the little girl helps her feel better about being in the US. And it is based on my relationship with my grandmother growing up. There's some personality quirks in this grandmother in the story that are definitely my grandmother. And it is illustrated by Zara Palacios, who's just incredibly talented. You have had books illustrated by her. And
yeah, she illustrated How to Code a Sandcastle and How to Code a Roller Coaster. So
yeah. Her art is just absolutely beautiful. And like, oh, this book is so heartwarming and fun. So I'm really excited for it to be out. And like I said, it was the first book we sold in March 2018. And so here it is coming out 4 years later.
Publishing is weird. Publishing is weird, especially now. It's
Yes.
it's as slow as it's ever been. And I mean, the getting your pre-orders in now is important because you'll make sure that you have a copy of the book because of all the shipping delays and problems like that. My next book is called My Pet Feet, and I put it around a different book, but it's called My Pet Feet, and it is it's illustrated by Billy Young, and it is about a little girl who wakes up to find that the letter R has disappeared from the world, and her pet ferret has turned into feet. And so it doesn't come out until August. Now yours is out in the spring, right?
March.
March.
Yeah, in March. Yeah.
So so this is a little ways away, but it is available for pre-order, My Pet Feet. And it's so the little girl needs to figure out how to turn her pet ferret back into, sorry, her pet feet back into ferret. And the whole book is written without the letter R. So everything that would have had an R has now turned into something else. Like she chases her pet feet past a fog and toad, down a tail in the woods, past the babbling brook, and into a gassy field, eventually finding him at the seashore, running by a bunch of calves. So you'll have to see, it's hilarious illustrations, the way that that Billy did it, and it's perfect for and it's just kind of funny.
Is it in rhyme too, Josh?
No, it's not in rhyme, but it's probably my cleverest book, I would say.
It is super clever. I remember when you showed it to us. The
yes,
F&G
I brought it to the
passed
new
around.
loft a couple weeks ago.
Oh my gosh, that was so amazing. It was
so fun.
funny.
It was fun to write a book without the letter R, and it was like a challenge, like a puzzle, sort of, to try to figure out what words you could use, the words you couldn't use, what words would be fun to change from one thing to another when you take the R away. But it was pretty cool. So, and if you're looking for
someone whose name begins with R.
Yeah,
it struck at my heart. I was like, oh no.
you couldn't have written, and I mean, no offense, if you were an illustrator, you would have been eliminated from being a potential illustrator. We need to find an illustrator. You notice on the cover, it doesn't say written by or illustrated by, just has our names, right, because we couldn't put that on there. There's no R's in this book. Even the R in Simon and Schuster on the spine is covered by a B. So so there's no R in that. They legal let us do that, which is good because it is published by Simon and Schuster. But yeah, and so just remind everyone what books you have that are out now that people can order this holiday season. At least the six that came out this year. Why don't you go with those? Yes,
so Red, White, and Whole I mentioned already. Bracelets for Bina's Brothers came out in April. It's centered around the Hindu holiday Raksha Bandhan, which is about brothers and sisters, but it's also a math book about kind of the early math concept of pattern making. And then Much Ado About Baseball, which was the companion novel to my debut Midsummer's Mayhem. It involves two 12-year-old math competition rivals who end up on the same summer baseball team, and they kind of can't stand each other, but they have to find a way to work together. It involves magic and snacks and math and lots of baseball. Let's see, Where Three Oceans Meet came out in August. That is a story about a girl, her mother and her grandmother, who travel to the very tip of India, a place called Kanyakumari, which is where they say three oceans meet. And kind of all that they learn about each other and their relationship along the way. A book of my heart, and that's beautifully illustrated by Archana Srinivasan. My Little Golden Book about Kamala Harris came out in August also, which I think that you don't need to say anything else about that. It's a little golden book about Kamala Harris. And then The Secret Code Inside You, all about your DNA, my nonfiction rhyming DNA book, which persisted in rhyme despite my trying to unrhyme it, came out in September. So that's all the ones that came out this year, and I'm grateful to have them. How about you? Did you have books coming out this year?
I did not have a book in 2021 at all, which it's the first time since 2015 that 2015 was my first book. It's the first time since 2014 that I didn't have a book come out. But I have 3 next year, I think. You never know, dates get shifted. But but last year I had the the fourth book in the Lady Pancake and Sir French Toast series came out, and it's called Short and Sweet. So all the Lady Pancake and Sir French Toast books are, I don't know, I think they make pretty good holiday gifts or Sunday brunch gifts or something like that. So, but definitely, yeah, some of them might be harder to get, and just because of printings and stuff. So you can read any of them in any order, but Short and Sweet is the newest one. It's one Lady Pancake and Sir French Toast. Unfortunately, they are going stale, and they visit Professor Biscotti, whose despoiling ray ends up working too well. It shrinks them down into little children instead of just despoiling them to regular adult foods. And so yeah, they cause culinary chaos running through the fridge, and yeah, and it sort of harkens back to the first one a little bit. But I like to change the genre with each book. The first one is a race, the second one's a mystery, third one's an action adventure spy thriller, and the fourth one is a sci-fi comedy magical body swap type, like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids or Freaky Friday.
Yes.
So
yes,
the next one's going to be a heist. Spoiler alert.
Nice.
But, don't tell anyone. Hopefully we'll get to announce it or share the cover soon. It's coming out next fall, from what I've been told.
Whoa, well, I love me a heist. I love me a heist story.
Yeah. It's a caper, if you will. So anyway, that's what I got,
Yeah.
and I think that's about it, Stacy. You still
There are
there?
a few others on our list, but maybe we could just share the list. So
Yeah, sure. Well, are there others that you want to talk about? I know we kind of
the one other pre-order that I must talk about is
Okay.
Hide and Geek,
Ah.
which, as somebody who always loved capers and puzzles in books, this is like a puzzle, like literally there's a puzzle maker in the town of these 4 kids, and they are like 4 kids. Their initials make up the word geek. So the toy factory that this puzzle maker used to own is shutting down, and like the parents' jobs are at risk, but then they find one last puzzle that could save everything, and they have to solve this puzzle to say. And so like that's it. That's like my entire childhood was about reading books about kids solving puzzles to save everything. So I'm like, I can't wait to read that one.
Oh, that's cool. There was books that I read to my kids a decade ago. I think it's a 3-book series called the Puzzling World of Winston Breen. And I remember reading that. They were super fun. It was some kids that really love puzzles, and they ended up needing to. It had a little bit of a Lemoncello library thing to it, but it was before the Mr. Lemoncello's library. So, but we really enjoyed reading those. It's by Eric Berlin. But anyway, so they're
Fun.
They were pretty cool. Yeah. So they had puzzles in the book that you could try to do, but we always skipped them because we just wanted to read what happened next. So you could wait, you could try to figure out the puzzle and then turn to the next chapter where you'd have the answer, or just go to the next chapter because you want to.
There you go. Yes.
All right. Well, thank you, Stacy.
So thank you. I don't see any questions in the Q&A, but Josh, I have a question I must ask you about my pet feet. I want to know, did you always know it was going to be the letter R, or did you go through all the letters to figure out which one you could write a book without, or how did you decide on the letter R?
It's interesting. I lucked out that it was that letter, because it originally was called My Best Fiend, and it was based on a typo, I think. I missed an R in a word, and it was fiend, and I was like, oh, that's funny. Fiend and friend are kind of the opposites. And I know there's an app now that's called Best Fiends or something like that, and I've never played the app. The book was written before the app. We originally submitted it as My Best Fiend in the first round, and I realized it was one of those things where as you're writing and you keep writing, and it's always had this title, you never thought about changing it. And I even forced in the phrase My Best Fiend a bunch of times. And at one point I finally realized, after we got some rejections, I was like, this would be better if it was called My Pet Feet. That's a better title anyway. It's funnier. It's more like, it'll bring your eyes to it. And also then I can get rid of all the times that I dropped in my best fiend. My best fiend was forcing it because your pet ferret's not your best friend. It's your pet ferret. So there is still one scene where there's a best fiend shows up, but yeah, so it always was R. But interestingly enough, R is the most commonly used consonant in the Oxford Concise English Dictionary. So that means for, if you're looking at like unique words, so like not plurals, not different forms of the same word, so like the root word. So the most root words have the letter R in it as the most, it's the third, E, then A, then R, most commonly used consonant. So that made it both easy and hard because it gave me a lot of chances that there was a word that I could take the letter R from and it would become another word because there are so many words that have R. So there was a lot of that, but it also meant that I couldn't use a lot of words because so many words have R's in them. So it was kind of both made it easier and harder, but I did actually luck out because I have since tried, not that I'm writing a sequel or anything, but I've thought about it and it's not, there's no other letter that you can do that with as easily to have words become other words. It's very tricky. And I think that it was the perfect word. I lucked into it on my first try. It always was going to be an R. But why do you ask? I'm just curious.
Because I was just imagining like trying to come up with all those words that work both with an R and without an R. And, you know, did it take a long time to figure out that that would be the best letter to use? Or are there other letters that, you know, would be equally easy or hard? Or
I think Josh just knew inherently that R is the best letter.
There's an R in my middle name, so there's that. But I really did just luck into it. I will say that Scrabble websites, like Scrabble dictionary websites, are very, very helpful because you can look for words that have R in them, but not just R, like words that have RT in them. So if you taken out the R, it's going to turn a cart into a cat and things like that. So it also had to be the same part of speech for the most part. You couldn't turn a noun into a verb, otherwise the sentence wouldn't make sense. So it's mostly nouns that get replaced because those are the easiest to replace a thing with a thing, and also it's funnier to see illustrated. It's harder to change a verb into a different verb because otherwise, you're not gonna all of a sudden, like, I don't have a good example of it, but you're not gonna all of a sudden be like walking, but then all of a sudden you're talking. I mean, like, those are two completely different things. Like, that wouldn't happen. But a cart that turned into a cat could have, there's a policewoman on the back of a galloping hose. Like, it makes you can see that, so you can visualize that. So but yeah, anyway,
I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, I'll definitely bring it by the store next time I come in, and hopefully
please do.
There. Yeah,
please do.
Awesome.
Well, this was great. Thank you both so much for doing this. I think, you gave folks lots and lots of ideas. And even though we didn't have a lot of people here, hopefully people will watch the recording and get some good ideas in the next couple of weeks. But we really appreciate you sharing that with us. And to the people who did come, we really appreciate your coming.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Thanks for having us. This is really fun.
Yeah.
Bye.
Have a good night.
Bye.
Bye.